Hello everyone, my name is Julia and today we're going to be painting a vintage ghost painting. These are so adorable, I love them so much, but if you're anything like me, if you live in a big city, it could take all day for me to go to all the different antique stores to try to find a painting that I like to paint a ghost on it. So I don't have quite that much time, so I'm going to paint a little one really quickly with you. So we are painting with acrylic paints. We're using Liquitex Basics. Even if you've never painted before, this painting is for absolute beginners. We're going to be using a newer color that I actually hadn't used before. This has been probably more recently invented, or I just never came across it, but it's Unbleached Titanium. I really love this color. If you don't have this color, you can kind of mix up a tan with some white, maybe some Naples Yellow, and try adding a teeny dab of black or something in it to make it a little bit grayer. But so we have Unbleached Titanium, Titanium White, Naples Yellow, Yellow Oxide, Burnt Sienna, Raw Umber, Hooker's Green, Cerulean Blue, Cadmium Yellow Deep, and Mars Black. So this is a really beautiful palette of colors. You honestly cannot go wrong with these, and you can definitely kind of make it your own. And since we are painting something that's a little more natural, right? The world is just filled with all sorts of fields and flowers, and there's just a million ways that you could do this. So don't feel like it needs to look just like mine or it needs to look too particular. The brushes we're going to be using today, very simple. We're going to be using a 1-inch flat, and then a size 6 Filbert. If yours is a little bit bigger than that, that's okay. That brush is going to be for the flower petals. So as long as you have something similar, it'll work just fine. Even if you just had a little 1/8 inch flat brush, that would work as well too. And then you're gonna need a little detail brush and then a palette knife. So ideally you want a palette knife that's short, because a short palette knife is going to be easier to make curved lines. So we're going to be trying to do some kind of curved pieces of grass and stems. When you have a longer palette knife like this one, it's harder to make it curve because it's so long. If you had a very large canvas, it would be easier. But so a shorter palette knife would be better, but whatever you have will work just fine. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So we're gonna do our background first. So go ahead and grab your 1-inch flat brush, and you're going to dip that in your water, and then you can lightly dab it on your paper towel. And I'm gonna keep my water off to the side just so it doesn't cast too much of a shadow here. So we're gonna start off with our sky. So the first thing we're gonna do is mix up a very light tint, light yellow tint. So that's when we're mixing any color with white. So I'm going to take some of my white here, and do not be shy with the paint on this painting. And a lot of my paintings, I'm trying to help you make sure that it dries quickly and not have it too thick. With this one, like, go to town with the paint. The thicker the better, because we're kind of making it look similar to an oil painting. And so when you're doing that with acrylic paints, you need a lot of paint. So we've got white, and now I'm going to take a teeny tiny dab of the Naples Yellow. A little bit's going to go a long way. I want to barely be able to see it. After you get that mixed up, this brush can be used in 2 ways. You can use the flat part, the flat side, to make a very thick line. You can use the edge to make a very thin line. Even if I'm using the edge, if I press down really hard, I'll make a very large line. So right now we're using the flat side of the brush. And you could do vertical or horizontal brush strokes. That's up to you. I'm going to be doing all vertical. So you want to decide how much you want yours to be sky and how much you want it to be the foreground. So you can either have a little sky and a lot of earth, or vice versa. So I'm going to do a little sky. So I'm going to come up to my top left corner here, and this is an 11 by 14 canvas. So I'm going to go down, let's say, find halfway and go a little bit above it. It's about 5 inches down. And I'm going to use the edge first to just draw a line. And now I'm going to go back, grab more paint, and I'm going to start to fill in my sky. So I'm adding in and I know it's hard to see on the camera. It's harder to capture the really, really light colors. But I'm adding in 2 kind of splotches here. The next thing I'm going to do is mix up, that was my dog's collar shaking there. I'm going to mix up a light blue. So I'm going to take some of my white. I didn't clean my brush off, but if your brush is really dry, you can dab it on your paper towel or dip it in your water and then dab it on your paper towel again. So I'm taking white. I'm going to take a teeny tiny bit of blue. Again, a little bit's going to go a long, long way, the Cerulean Blue. And then if you like really bright colors, you can leave it just like that. If you want it to be a little bit more neutral, you can take a teeny dab of the burnt sienna. And that's just going to make it a little bit more neutral. So I've got a very, very light blue now. It's so light that it's almost white. I'm doing vertical brush strokes. I'm trying to add a lot of paint on here. I don't want it to dry quickly because later on we're going to use the palette knife up here and we want it to still be just a little bit wet. So we really just want to fill it in with a lot of paint. And you might be asking, are we trying to cover up the splotches of pale yellow or tint? Not necessarily. You want to leave some areas where it's still just the pale yellow. And you can imagine them as kind of really soft clouds that you can't really see in the sky there. If you run out of paint, go ahead and mix up more. And make sure that you get a decent amount all the way down to the edge. For this painting, I wouldn't worry about painting your edges as you go unless you're going to do it very quickly, because we want to kind of keep it moving here so our paint doesn't dry. So especially along this edge, I'm getting lots of paint. And if you want it really smooth, you could go back and forth in long brush strokes. Keep in mind, if your brush goes straight against the canvas, you're going to kind of dig the paint off. If you have your handle kind of lay so that it's more parallel to the canvas, that's how you're going to lay paint on a little bit more thickly. All right. So I've gone down and added more paint right to the bottom edge here. Now I'm going to take my brush. I don't need to clean it out, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab straight blue, Cerulean Blue, and a teeny dab of my burnt sienna. And I'm going to mix those together. And you should have kind of a neutral blue color. And I'm going to take this, and my brush strokes are going to start down below my sky. I'm using the flat side of my brush, and I'm going to flick my brush upwards. I'm going to go all the way across. And try to not make it a straight line. Try to mess it up a little bit. So maybe it goes up higher in one area, and then maybe it comes down lower. And then maybe it goes up high again. And so the motion of my brush, it starts kind of perpendicular. It's going straight up, and then I'm just kind of flicking it upwards, and it's blending in with the paint because the paint is still wet. So if I keep brushing over this over and over and over, what's going to happen? Eventually it's all just going to become one color, one light blue. So you don't want to brush over it too much. So that's my first little layer there. I'm going to go back, grab more blue. And now I'm gonna lay this on. So this time I'm gonna have my brush more parallel to the canvas so that I can lay it on a little bit more thickly so that it doesn't blend in so much. The last color that I'm gonna add along that edge there is gonna be black. So I'm gonna take a little bit of black, still haven't cleaned my brush out, and I'm gonna mix it in with my blue. And try not to mix it all the way. Just kind of mix it a little bit. It's gonna mix on its own when it comes up here, and I'm not trying to make too much of a gray. I want it to be a little bit black. And then I'm doing the same thing. I'm going across the edge here. So when you get to this point, you can look at it and kind of decide what you want to do. If you like it just how it is, you can leave it. If you want to blend it a little bit more, you can do that as well. If you want to add more of your light color at the top, you can do that as well. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to wipe off any extra paint here on my paper towel. That's going to keep my water cleaner longer. To clean my brush out, I'm going to press it against the bottom of the glass and spin it in a circle. And I'm going to take just a damp brush. So not soaking wet because that will remove the paint, but just lightly damp. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to kind of brush over this a little bit very lightly to make it even more blended. So very lightly, and I'm doing short brush strokes. And when I do a short brush stroke, I'm going to pick up a little blue on the way, and it's going to make kind of these little marks that you see here, these little square marks. And I really like that. But it's kind of personal preference. They look good as long as they're not all in a straight row. They look what you would call painterly. This is a more painterly painting. There's graphic, where you see just kind of very straight outlines and it's filled in with a solid color. And then there's painterly, where you're seeing the brush strokes. I'm gonna come down and do a few more strokes in here. And then I'm gonna wipe my brush. So I picked up a little bit too much. And I'm lightly gonna do some brush strokes going up again. All right. So the next color that we're gonna add in here is gonna be just a little bit of green. So I'm gonna take my brush. If you have a lot of paint on it, you can go ahead and clean it out again. If there's not, then what we're gonna do, you're gonna take a little bit of your Hooker's green here, and you can mix it right in with a little bit of Cerulean, just a teeny bit. You can do a little bit of Naples, just a little bit. And if you like a brighter green, leave it just like that. If you want it just a tad more neutral, just a dab of burnt sienna is just gonna knock that back just a little bit. I'm gonna take this color and I'm gonna go right below my sky and I'm gonna brush upwards. So my brush strokes are short. My brush is perpendicular and I'm flicking my brush upwards. I probably could have mixed up a little bit more paint. So there's green, a little bit of white, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of blue. And if you're seeing the texture of your canvas, just remember that you can see that up close. You're not going to be able to see that when your painting's up on the wall. Plus, this painting is about our cute little ghost. But I guess something I forgot to mention is that even if you don't want to do a little ghost on it, it's still a nice little landscape. Okay, so I've got my green in there. It's about an inch thick going across. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean my brush out. So again, wiping my brush on the side before I go to my water. And we're gonna start going to town. Dab your brush, but leave it pretty damp with this unbleached titanium. So we're gonna start filling it in like crazy down here with vertical brush strokes using the flat side of your brush. And you can leave a little bit of spaces. My brush strokes are about 2-3 inches long. My paint is thick. I'm really going to town with it. And then I'm gonna start brushing up over this green. So if you have a ton of paint on your brush still up here, you can either, wipe it off down at the bottom part of your canvas or wipe it off on the side. And then when you barely have any paint left on your brush, go ahead and use your brush to brush up into the green again. And that's gonna blend it in a little bit. And don't be afraid for the colors to mix. For the blue to come down a little bit, for the unbleached titanium, your tan color to go up a little bit. So after you've finished adding in your unbleached titanium, we're just gonna start moving our way down the line. So we're going to next go to our Naples Yellow. That's the next color we have there. I didn't clean my brush. I'm just grabbing some Naples Yellow and I'm gonna do random brush strokes. Move down the line, yellow oxide. Do some random brush strokes. Have some go off the edge. Go down the line, and now we're gonna start working on the bottom here. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of burnt sienna here, using the flat side of my brush, starting at the bottom of my canvas, and I'm gonna flick my brush upwards. Moving down the line, I'm gonna grab some of my raw umber, starting at the bottom, flicking my brush upwards. And we're gonna blend these all in a lot more. We're just kind of adding in some thick paint right now for us to work with. The last color that we're gonna do down here is going to be a little bit of black. So I'm not gonna go too crazy with the black. You can if you want yours more black and gray. I'm gonna grab a teeny bit of black and I'm gonna brush over where I put the raw umber. So it's just gonna make it a little bit darker. And now I'm gonna go ahead, wipe my brush, clean it out. And I'm gonna go in there with some of my green. So wherever I have some little spaces left over now, I'm gonna add some of that green. And you can use more of whatever colors you like the best. Okay, now I have my canvas pretty much filled in here. And I'm gonna use just a damp brush, so if it got too dry, dip it again, get it damp. And I'm gonna start to brush over this to blend it together. Remember, if I keep brushing and I don't stop, eventually this will just turn into one brown color. So you wanna, take your time, stop, look at it. It's kind of finding that happy medium, not pushing it too far, but still kind of blending it together. So there's two ways that you can blend this. One is using the flat side of your brush like we've been doing, and just doing little short brush strokes with the flat side of your brush. Another way is using the edge of your brush and purposefully pressing it down a little bit harder. And that's gonna blend it a little bit more, then that's when you'll really kind of see the colors start to come together there. And it's nice when you've gone down here on the bottom and you've picked up some of the darker colors, and then you're kind of carrying that upwards. So I use the edge of my brush to do shorter brush strokes. Now I'm going to go in again with the flat side of my brush, because now it's even more blended, and I'm just going to lightly brush over it. So again, handle more parallel to the canvas and very, very lightly brushing over, because it's getting to where I want it to be. Okay, so my last step that I want to do is just here on the bottom. I just want to make sure that I drag up that dark paint enough and that it looks like it's coming upwards. So I'm just going to come over here, very lightly flick my brush up again. Because this is the foreground, and I just want it to appear a little bit darker to give it some weight here in the front. So if it doesn't look darker, you can go in, especially with more of your raw umber. And same thing, if it's too dark, then you can come in with your lighter colors again. I am painting this bottom edge right now just because I have so much paint that's kind of falling off the edge of the canvas. I just hate to waste paint, so I want to just make sure that it gets to good use. So if it got too dark down here for your liking, then you could come in with more of your, especially your titanium, and you could lightly go over it with that, which I am out because I used all of it. So maybe you wanted a couple areas just that were back to more of the titanium. You could do that as well. The last color I'm going to add in here is just a little bit of white. So I'm now going to clean my brush out. I didn't add in the white before because what can happen is the white can just end up mixing with everything so much. It just makes everything lighter and lighter. So just to kind of add a highlight at the end, I'm going to do some white. I am going to knock it down with a little bit of Naples Yellow so that it's not pure white, but I still want it to be very, very bright, like the sky. And so just pick some areas that you want to be just a little bit lighter. Make sure your handle is parallel. If it looks too bright, just brush over it again. If it's not showing up because your paint's too thick, just go back and grab more. All right. So once you get this all finished, it's going to be time to start with the palette knife. So you can wipe your brush off, drop it in the water so the paint doesn't dry out on top of it, and get out your little palette knife. If you haven't used one of these before, it's so fun, and I love using palette knives. To do a very thin line, even with a detail brush, even with a very long detail brush that's literally made for that, it takes a very long time. And I like to kind of paint wild, paint fast. So the palette knife is great for that. We're gonna start off with some little teeny stems in the background, and we're gonna use our light green. So if you don't have any left, it's gonna be white, a little bit of your Hooker's green, a little bit of your burnt sienna, and then you can add a little bit of Naples Yellow to it as well. So I'm using the edge of my I'm using the edge of my palette knife, and I'm just getting, I know that's kind of hard to see, I'm getting just a little bit on the edge there. You can try this out on the side first if you'd like to, if you're scared to kind of go onto your canvas, or you can just go for it. So I'm going to use the edge of my brush, and I'm doing stems that are very far off in the background, and that's why they're going to be lighter. Can barely see them. You want them to be random. You don't want to do every 1 inch and all the same height. You want to mix it up, right? So maybe one goes off the edge of the canvas, maybe one short, maybe one crosses, and then you will need to get it on the other side to do it on the other side. So to curve it, I'm kind of pressing down the edge, and then I'm turning, okay? In some, you're not gonna have any paint on your palette knife at all, but it's still gonna make a line because it's gonna dig off the paint that was there from before. So it's really up to you how many of those ones you want to do. I'm now going to move down a little bit. Start coming down into the foreground. And notice I am curving them towards the middle. You don't really have to do that. You can have them curving out or going all different directions. That just kind of tends to be what I do. I just kind of curve them in. If you get any that are really big globs of paint, love it. Looks awesome. If you really don't like it, just wipe it off. But I love when I get some really kind of thick ones. All right, so we did it in our light green. Then we're gonna come in with some of our titanium. So I'm not even gonna clean off my palette knife. I'm just gonna go in and grab my titanium here, and I'm gonna add some in that color. So these ones are going to be larger, more in the foreground. So you can be a little bit more specific about where you put them if you want. I always like to put flowers or whatever the focus is, I like to put it in the golden mean. So either in one of these 4 spots here. For this, I'm gonna put my ghost kind of right in the middle here. So I'll probably have a flower right here, so I can just kind of plan for that and do one of my stems right there. Don't forget to have some of them overlapping. And the next color we're going to do is going to be a little bit of black. So if there's a ton of paint on your palette knife, you can just wipe it off. Save it for later. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna take some of my black. I'm gonna mix a little bit of raw umber in it so that it's not too harsh. They always say you don't wanna really use any pure black on your canvas except for, you know, on like the pupil of an eye or something you really want to stand out. But it's hard when you just love the color black. You just wanna put it everywhere. So I'm gonna take this black now. I'm gonna do this on some of the edges of my titanium white ones. So what I'm doing is I'm lining up my palette knife on the right side, and it's making it look like it's shaded. Another way of doing that would be to dip in the titanium white and the black at the same time. That would be another way. And I'm gonna do some that are just kind of off on their own. So notice if you're using just the edge, it's gonna make them more thin. If you start to kind of bend your palette knife forward or back and there's a lot of paint, that's gonna make it a little bit thicker. I'm probably not gonna do any dark color up here in the sky. I'll stop where our horizon line stops there. And maybe when I start to kind of run out is when I'll go more up. So the last color I'm going to want to do is going to be a dark green. So I'm going to take my Hooker's green here, set that down. I'm going to add just a little bit of black to that. Get a nice dark green color. And I'm going to add in some stems with that. And I feel like having one going like off in a different direction, a big one right here. And these are going all a little bit too much the same. So I'm going to break that up. Have one going against the grain. And same thing with your dark green. You can line it up on the edge of any of the lighter color ones that you did. And this one you can take to some of these ones up top here and just run right along the edge of it. And something that helps, if you find that you're being a little bit timid, like you're afraid to mess it up, if you just go for it, your lines are gonna come out a lot more smoothly, right? If I'm very like scared and I'm trying to stay right along the edge, chances are I won't. But if I just kind of go for it, you may hit it, you may miss, but regardless, it's gonna look like a confident brush stroke or palette stroke. So I'd make sure to have some that go off the edge of the canvas as well. right, so when you feel like you have a decent amount of stems in there for what you'd like, you can always come back and add in more. Wipe off any excess paint here on your palette. And by the way, obviously a palette knife is great for mixing colors, and we could have been using it the whole time. But when I'm teaching with acrylic paint, because as many people don't use palette knives for acrylic as they do for oil paint. I feel like with oil painting, it's super necessary, but I feel like it's less necessary with acrylic painting. And I think that's because with acrylic, it's very easy to clean out your brush and your water. But when you're painting with oil, you're using mineral spirits, and you don't want to just be dumping lots of paint to your mineral spirits because you're trying to make that last and not use a ton of it. But you can wipe off your paint here, and then you can take your palette knife and just kind of pinch it in between your paper towel. And if you think you're going to be all done with it, you can kind of dip it in your water and get it even cleaner there. And I don't just stick this to soak in the water just because it's wood and I want it to last. So I'm going to set that off to the side now. I'm going to take my detail brush, dip that in my water. And the detail brush can be tricky. So when you dab it on your paper towel, there's still maybe some water kind of stuck up here. And you may go to paint and then that water drops down. Woo, got wild there with my finger. The water drops down and kind of makes a puddle. So when you dip it in your water, just kind of dab the whole side of the brush on the paper towel just to make sure that you don't have any extra water there. So now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna add in a little bit more greenery to the tops of these stems. So I'm taking my dark green color that we just used. And let's start off with one of the big ones in the front here. So I'm gonna make a very wide V. So I'm going to the top of my stem here, and I'm gonna make a very wide V. So it basically looks like this. And from there, on top of your stem, and from there, you can add on some little kind of wispy leaves, and how you can make it get thinner and pointy is you press down hard at first and then you release the pressure, and that's going to give you the little point. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm doing it kind of thick, getting some nice globs of paint. And I'm not going to do this on all of them because the flowers are going to be facing all different directions. So some of them I'll do it on and some of them I won't. If you wanted to get creative and add some little leaves in, you could do that as well. I am going to do this even on my ones all the way up here. And if you have a lot of paint, it's going to start getting all of your arm like this. So you got to kind of balance your arm over. I try not to balance my arm over because if I lean forward, you're going to see my large forehead coming into the screen. So I kind of have to do this in a special way here. And you can get so wild with paintings like these. You can add one literally where there's not even a stem. Like I can come in like right here and just be like, you know what? There's a little stem there. You can't see it, but it's hidden behind the tall grass. I'm not going to do too many at the top there. So once you finish, you can always come back in and add more. At this point in the painting is where you're going to be kind of building it up. And so, you know, do a little bit go to the next step. You can come back in and add more in later. So the next step is we're gonna start with our little flowers. So exciting. So I'm gonna wipe my brush, paper towel. I'm gonna drop that in my water. Let's switch to the Filbert and then we can go back to our detail brush to do some smaller flowers that look a little bit different. So I'm gonna take my Filbert, dip that in the water. I love Filberts. They're so just cute and perfect for clouds and petals. I love how round they are. So you could do any and every kind of flower color that you'd like. You can stick with all white. You can do a bunch of different colors. I will leave that up to you. So if you're out of white, make sure you grab more. If you're not, go ahead and pick some up. So this brush, when you look at it, right, it's in the shape of a flower petal. So if I use the flat side, I can make petal shaped brush strokes. I can do 5, I can do 4, I can do 6. This is a painting. It's not a photo. You can do whatever you want. And I can show you with a little bit bigger of a brush on the side because I know it's probably hard to see all of that. So I've got a bigger Filbert and I will show you in a different color so you can kind of just see what it is I'm doing. So I'll take some of this blue here, using the flat side of my brush so I can use the end of the brush to be the end of the petal. So that's one way you can do it. You can do it in the opposite direction, starting in the middle. Flicking your brush out. And then the other thing we're going to be doing is kind of messy flowers. Maybe it's just a brush stroke going to the side. Maybe it's going up and down. Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's 3. Maybe it is using the edge of your brush to have the petals facing upwards. So you can get really kind of wild at this point. So I've got my little Filbert here. And you kind of got to use a lot of white, pure white, to really kind of make it stand out against this because it's kind of a light background. So let's see, where do I want to start? I'll start right here. In my foreground, I want to have some that are really big. Okay. And when I get in the very background, as I get further and further back, I want them to get smaller and smaller. So here in the middle, maybe I have one that's medium size. And back here, maybe I use the edge of my brush and I just have little dabs of white. And you can also switch to your detail brush at any point to make smaller little strokes. When you're doing this, we do want to kind of fill it in, but you want to make sure that you're not doing the same mark again and again. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I just go dab, 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 it's going to be very noticeable that they're all in a row. And we want them to kind of all be different. So try to mix it up a little bit. And your paint is probably still a little bit wet, and that's perfect. It just makes the flower look like it has more texture to it. And I'm doing some of all of these. I like with the petals going out. I like with the petals going in. I like it all. And the fun part is going to be adding the yellow to the middle. I'll show you kind of when I really go to town here. And don't forget the overlapping. Helps it look more interesting, more balanced, more natural. So don't be afraid to go like right over the top of a stem. Like here's a stem, I can just go right over that with some flower petals, even though can't see what's Can't see another stem that it belongs to. It's okay. Wherever you do plan on putting your ghost, I would try not to put too big of globs of paint there, just because you're gonna see kind of the texture of the glob even if it dries underneath the ghost. And so when I say building it up slowly, after you get a few in there, go ahead and wipe your brush and get in there with some yellow centers so that you can start to get a feel for it. So for this, you could use either brush. You could use your Filbert, but if you're more comfortable with a smaller brush, you can use your detail brush. All we're doing is just a little glob of paint. So this is where definitely make sure you get that white off of your handle there. So I'm going to take the yellow, the cadmium yellow deep. That's what this color right here is for. We didn't use that in the background. This is kind of our standout color. It's so pretty. It's like a little bit orangey. And you're going to put that in the center of some of your larger flowers. And it's just a little dab. It doesn't need to look like a circle. Some of your petals are facing probably upwards and you can't see the center. So keep that in mind as well. And you can do some little ones that are kind of off in the distance, maybe some that don't belong to anything. They're just floating around. I'm gonna need a lot more flowers, especially on the bottom here and coming off the edge. But I just want to kind of show you the rest of the steps for this part so you know what's coming. So basically what I'm doing for the center of the flowers, I'll show you big right here. I'm doing a little glob and then wiping my brush off, and I'm going to take some burnt sienna and I'm just going to outline one side of the yellow. So I'm going to do the bottom edge for mine. So burnt sienna now, and I'm just going to go right along the bottom edge of my yellow, and that's just going to give it even more kind of definition. Another way you could have done that, if you're more comfortable, is just grabbing the yellow and grabbing the burnt sienna at the same time and just adding that somewhere. You can do that. It's just the burnt sienna can be kind of overpowering and it might take over the yellow, but that would be a quicker way to do it. So I'll show you some flowers now with my detail brush. I'm going to do some little teeny ones. I can start up here at the top. And we're just going to continue on like this, just filling in with as many flowers as you want. Maybe you just want a few, you're more focused on the ghost, or maybe you want a ton. I would especially get ones that look like they're coming off the edge of the canvas. So maybe over here, have a few petals coming off. Maybe over here. And that looks like we're kind of peeking in on a scene rather than cutting out and trying to force everything into a box. And then I'm going to get some really big ones here down in the front. Let's see. And don't forget that after we do our ghost, you're going to be adding in more flowers in front of your ghost. Should I put this flower literally right where my ghost was going to go? So since I did that, this is a good learning experience. I did what I said not to. I'm going to take my finger, because I did put some glob of paint there, and I'm just going to dab it. I don't need to remove it, but when I dab it, then it makes the paint a little bit flatter, so there's nothing too thick. And also I won't have to wait as long for it to dry before I can get in there with my little ghosty. So just go ahead and listen to your tunes, play your music, just enjoy this part of the painting. It's just relaxing. Just painting your flowers. So another technique you can use to do the centers of your flowers if you want to is you can just load up your size 6 Filbert. I wouldn't do this if you have a bigger Filbert, unless you're doing some really big flowers, but you can load it up in the yellow and then just dip one side in the burnt sienna. So I'm gonna dip just the side that's closest to me here in the burnt sienna, and that would allow you to do kind of 2 steps at once. So I'll show you on the side here. I can just do a little brush stroke with the flat side of my brush. And again, if I'm doing perpendicular, it's not going to be quite the same. And that kind of add them in at the same time. So even though we are doing larger flowers in the foreground and smaller flowers in the background, that's to give the illusion that this is closer to us and that's further away. You still want to have some little flowers up here too. You don't want a lot of big flowers back there, no giant ones, but you want little flowers up here, right? Because you don't go into nature and it's just like every flower around you is giant, right? Some of them are big and some of them are small. So don't forget to add some little ones up front here. The other thing is when you're finished adding in your flowers, you can go back in with your detail brush, and if you wanted to add more of your dark green to any of your stems or underneath your flowers, you can. So let me see if I can find one where I kind of like covered it up with so many petals. Let's see. Or maybe I just want to add it. So right here, I see this one. So I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of the dark green underneath it. And if you have any daisies that are facing straight up, and I'll show you on the side over here. Well, like this one. So the petals are facing straight up. Then you can go down to the bottom of it with your dark green, and you can either do little brush strokes going up, starting up and going down, or you can start underneath and you can kind of flick your brush up underneath, but just to add the little portion of greenery that kind of holds the flower together and connects it to the stem there. And even if some of your stems don't have flowers, that happens, right? In nature, there's like a big windstorm and all the petals get knocked off. So that's fine. So when you finish with that, if you want to go back in with any last minute palette knife stems or sticks, you can. One reason I would do it is just to go over the front of just a few flowers to just create a little bit more illusion of overlapping. So I'm taking my palette knife and a little bit of my dark green, and I'm just going to pick just a few. I'm not going to do a lot, but do it on a flower you don't love. Don't go right over a really nice flower that you just love so much. But you can pick one you're not crazy about, and you can just go right over the front of it. Or if any of them don't have stems that you want them to, you can do that as well. So I think that's it for my flowers. So at this point, you want to definitely wait until this is dry to do your ghost. If you feel confident about it, go for it. But if you don't, then I would wait. So if you want your ghost to be more transparent, then you definitely want to wait, because you'll have to add some water to your paint in order to make it see-through. And there are other paint colors like zinc white, which usually doesn't come in acrylic sets. It's more of an oil paint thing, but zinc white is more transparent. You could also add some sort of clear medium to your paint. Golden makes a lot of those to make your paint more transparent, or you can have your ghost just be thicker. So that's kind of up to you. But I would wait until your paint is completely dry before you do your ghost. So go ahead, and now's a good time to paint the edges. So paint your edges and then we'll come in with the ghost. All right, so now's the time to decide if you want to just leave your painting as it is, you like it that way, or if you want to add in a little ghost. So I'm going to also show you on the side here on this black piece of paper, because it's going to be kind of hard to see the transparent white. So I'm going to be using my little Filbert brush. So clean that out in your water. Dab it on your paper towel. First thing you want to decide is how many ghosts you want. A lot of people like to do, you know, one ghost over here, one over here, two holding hands. I'm just going to do standard, just one ghost. So I'm going to take white paint, and what I want you to do is take your white, go off to the side, and what I'm doing is I'm working it into the brush, but I don't have any thick globs on there. And my brush is still a little bit watery. So let's get to where there's not any thick globs of paint on my brush. And then I'm gonna figure out where I want my ghost to be. So I recommend putting it so that its head goes up into the blue just a little bit. Otherwise it's gonna look like it's kind of way in the foreground. So you could do yours off center. I'm gonna do mine center. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball the center of my canvas here. And I'm gonna go up into my blue just a little bit. And that's gonna be the top of my ghost. So if you feel more comfortable, you can first just do a line using the edge of your brush down, so you can kind of figure out how big you want your ghost to be. And then you're going to do, so here's the top, and then I've done a little line down. And now I'm gonna go to the top here using the edge of my brush. And I would start out making him smaller because it's easier to make him bigger. It's harder to make him smaller again. And I'm gonna go down and kind of wave out. Same thing, kind of curve around, down and wave out. Curve around, down and wave out. Curve around, down and wave out. So I want my head to be just a little bit more pointy than that. I made his head just a little bit wide. So in that case, all I need to do is just make him a little bit taller. So I'll make him a little bit taller. And I'm grabbing more paint, but I'm working it in over here. And if it's too dark, too opaque, shall I say, because it's not that dark because it's white, but if it's too opaque, meaning you can't see through it at all, mix a little bit of water in. And now you can decide if you want, there's a few different ways you could do this. You could have him kind of flare out like this. And you could also make it look like he's kind of lifting up an arm by going out and then kind of creating a little bit of a triangle. And that makes it look like he's kind of lifting his arm up. So I'm going to go out. A lot of the front of it is going to be covered with a little bit more flowers if you'd like to, so you don't have to worry too much about it. but it's up to you. So basically, here's the shape of my ghost. And now I'm gonna start in at the top. The top is where I want it to be the most opaque. So that's where I'm gonna have the most thick kind of white paint. And then as it goes down, I like the more transparent ghosts. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the edge of my brush and I'm gonna make it look like there's kind of folds in the fabric. Okay, so this is what I have right now, kind of something like this. Now I'm gonna take the edge of my brush and I'm gonna do lines. So wherever there's a kind of little peak there, I can do a line. Maybe some are taller and some are shorter. Remember to kind of mix it up. So using the edge, I've got some white lines going upwards. I'm going to start to brush that white down. There's not very much paint on my brush at all. Okay. So now I'm going to make sure my brush is damp. And this time I'm going to dip just the left side of my Filbert in pure white paint. Straight white. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to use the flat side of my brush and I'm going to angle my handle so that it's more parallel so I can lay it on a little bit more thickly. And I'm going to drag that down. And what that's going to do, it's going to kind of naturally shade it so that it ends up going from bright white and kind of fading into transparent. If you need to make it even more, stand out even more, go back, grab more paint. You can wiggle your brush a little bit if you want to. When you're ready to do the other side, you can just flip your brush over, go on the other side. And if it's not blending that well, then it's time to get your brush wet again. So I can get my brush wet. Grab the white on one side. And now I'm going to do the same thing with these. So here, let me show you the technique that we just did to blend this. So I've got the water on one side and the white. Sorry, there's a bump underneath there. And the white on one side, the water on one side, and then it naturally kind of fades. And now we're going to go in to our little folds in the fabric and do the same thing. And you can start at the bottom or you can start at the top. See how that's kind of blending out there? And now I can grab the paint, flip my brush over. Get my brush wet again if I need to. So let's say you do something like this and you get two big marks. Just grab some water and brush over it and blend it in a little bit more. So one shape I would kind of stay away from is if it looks bulbous. So if it looks very wide at the top and then it comes in like a skinny neck, because what makes it look more ghosty, I feel like, is when it kind of flares out from the head. Like the head is the skinniest and then it kind of flares out from there. So kind of keep that in mind. Go over my folds of fabric here. Now I'm going to go in with the pure white here. I'm going to add especially more at the top. Remembering that if I have my brush vertical, perpendicular to the canvas, it's going to lift the paint off. And if I lean it back a little, it's going to lay it on a little bit more. And so from here, you could either, if you're not going to paint flowers in the front, you kind of clean up this edge, have paint on the end of your brush or the edge of your brush, and kind of carry it down. Or if you want it to flare out more, you can use the edge of your brush, kind of drag it down to have more of the flared look, or like it kind of just blends off into nothingness. I'm going to go and keep adding a little bit more to my top here, just adding layers. Because you kind of have to build it up to make it as bright as you want it to be. And I could go on and shade this with blue or gray, but because this is a beginner painting and because, you know, I don't want it to take a super long time because we're trying to decorate like now before Halloween. So I'm just going to leave mine white and kind of transparent. I think it looks pretty. So once you get your ghosts filled in, while you wait for the head to dry a little bit before you come in with the eyes, that's when you can add some more grass in the front here. So I'm just going to do one last go. What I'm doing right now is I'm giving it a sharp edge by going over it again, making sure I have really thick white paint on the edge of my brush. I'm giving it a very sharp edge Doesn't have to have that. You can have a soft edge. It's, you know, it's really up to you. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and add a little bit of grass and flowers in front. So I'm going to switch back to my 1-inch flat here, and I'm going to make sure for sure that I don't have a ton of water, because then my ghost will just disappear. And I'm going to come in with a little bit of my unbleached titanium, grab some paint, and then wipe it on the side. See, I still have too much water, so that you don't have too much there. And then I'm going to go underneath my ghost. I'm going to do a couple brush strokes with the flat side of my brush, and then I'll do a couple with the edge of my brush. And I'm not going to do it everywhere, because then we'll just kind of undo everything we just did. So just in a couple spots, use the edge of your brush. And then I'm going to come in, let's move this. Well, I guess I don't need to. I can just grab some green from right here. So I'm going to grab some of my green and do the same thing very lightly, like it's a teeny little bit of grass that's coming in front. Barely any paint, lightly brushing upwards. It's going to take me like 1 minute, but you gotta be quiet, okay? I'll be right back. So taking our light green and just very, very lightly you can use the edge of your brush too. But we're just trying to create the illusion of overlapping. So then I'm going to drop that brush off, get out my palette knife, and I'm going to do just a couple of flowers that go in front of my little ghost here. So I'm going to use my titanium white, and I don't want them too big or too bold, I don't think. That's 3. And then I'm going to come in with my dark green. So I'm going to take the hooker's green with a little bit of black. Trace that right along the edge. And I'm pretty much out of my green here, so I'm going to need to restock here. And so that it's not too stark and crazy, I might just mix a little bit of my lighter green in there. You can mix a little bit of Naples Yellow. And I'm just lining it up along the right side, the right edge there. And how many you do might depend on how many you did in the first place. If yours is like really, really full, you might want to do a lot. But if you didn't do too many flowers, then you might want to do a little bit less. Okay, so I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have like 9 going right here. So now I'm going to wipe my palette knife off. And I'm going to first just go in with my petals. So I'm going to take my little Filbert. Make sure there's no water. It's going to drop on my little ghost here. I'm not going to do this on all. See that water? There it is. I'm not going to do flowers on all of these stems, just a few of them. And I'm doing them not too big either. And go ahead and go in there with your yellow and see what you think about how many flowers you did. And you can use your detailed brush. I'm using my Filbert. I'm going to take my finger and just knock back one of these here so that it's not too much here. And I'm just going to add some little dabs of white, little pieces that are hanging out. And so this is a little baby art lesson. Equals cancel out each other. So unless you're trying to create something very symmetrical, you don't want two things that look too similar. So right now what I'm really seeing when I look at the big picture is I just did these 2 flowers that are just really similar. They're going in that like exact same direction. They're similar in size. And that's just kind of like making my eye, it's bothering my eye. So as cute as I thought this one was, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of dab that out a little bit to make it look lighter. And then I'm going to come in with another stem. And I'm actually going to go right through it. I know, sad. That was such a cute little flower. get attached to these little babies. So add a little stem there. And then I'm gonna do a little teeny baby flower at the end of that. And that's gonna add that variation that my eye is looking for. So I'll come in now, little detail brush. And just do a teeny tiny little flower. And if you didn't add any burnt sienna and you want to, you can. Add it to the center of a few of your little cute little daisies. All right, time for the eyes. Ooh, spooky. Okay, so we're gonna use our detail brush, black paint, of course. Work it into your brush so that there's no giant globs. Start small. You can always make it bigger. Some people like to make theirs more cute with like a little smile. Mine is not gonna have a smile. It's just gonna have two little ghosty eyes. So this is hard not to rest my hand on here because I have to lean back again so that you can't see my head. So I'm gonna do my best to aim. I'm gonna use my pinky to kind of rest over here. So the first thing I would do is just kind of eyeball the center. I'd go down. Really, I can't give you an exact measurement because it depends on how big you made your ghost. But just imagine that there's a head under there and that there would be a forehead, and kind of use that to give your best guess. So I'd imagine my forehead's right here, and I'd put it maybe even slightly lower than where you think. Because if someone's wearing a sheet over their head, right there, sometimes the eyes kind of sink lower. And I want mine, I believe, a little bit more close together. So I'm gonna make them oval shape. And my white paint is still a little bit wet. So if that happens to you, just stop and let it dry a little bit. I'm not going to. I'm gonna finish this. And I'm shooting for more of a long oval shape. So if you want yours to be solid black, you can keep going over it, adding more black. And then the last thing would just be a little smile if you wanted to do a smile. So I can show you real quick. If you had filled in your ghost at the top there with white, and you wanted to do a smile, and two little eyes, and then just a little beep. You could put it up higher, down lower. He's a happy little ghost. And that is it. That's our little ghost painting, or vintage ghost painting. All right, thank you so much for painting with me today. This was really fun. It was super fun. I'm probably gonna do like 5 more of these because I love Halloween, love ghosts, love nature paintings, so it's just all of the best things. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Please send me your paintings, pictures of your paintings. I'd love to see them. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wicked Halloween.